Okay, welcome to the Meat Dudes. We are meat obsessed, Wagyu focused, source driven, and barbecue influenced. And on this podcast, Tyler and I got to actually chill out with a good buddy of ours, a new good buddy of ours, Dr. Philip Bass, meat scientist out of the University of Idaho. So we got to judge the Wagyu, the best Wagyu steak in America competition with Dr. Bass. He was the real professional they brought in, and they brought in us too. And there was a panelist too. There was a bunch of other people, but he actually judged the actual marbling. So the marbling of and the meat of every single ribeye, the eye of the ribeye. It was fascinating to watch him. So we got to chill out with him that whole weekend and get to know him, and then he got to jump on the podcast. So I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this next one. He is not only a meat scientist, he is an associate professor, and he is a hell of a teacher. And you can tell his energy just comes through. He is so much fun to talk to. Me and Tyler were so excited to be able to talk to this guy. We're going to have him on so much more. He's got his own podcast as well. He's such a great dude. So definitely listen to this one. It's about an hour long, and it is just full of just amazing tidbits and great content. And he actually breaks down like the science of meat. So really excited for you guys to listen to this one. Let's get after it. Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
I'm Tyler.
Sweet. And today, our guest today is Dr. Philip Bass, Associate Professor of Meat Science at the University of Idaho's Department of Animal, Veterinary, and Food Scientists. With a PhD in animal science and a deep focus on beef quality, processing, and the science behind meat, Dr. Bass brings both an academic rigor and real-world experience to the table, and he's been recognized as one of the agricultural industry's 40 under 40 rising leaders, and we got to judge some Wagyu beef with him, man. Dr. Bass, how you doing, man?
I'm great. This is exciting to see you guys again.
Yeah, it's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. So that was so much fun, man. And I got to say, at the American Wagyu Association, judging the meat with you, that was so much fun. You know, I got to say something before we get started, man. You not only are you a meat scientist, but I really think that you are an awesome teacher. Watching you break down that beef was like so much fun, and you're so engaging, a room full of people, and like everybody was just like stuck on you, man.
Well, awesome. When you're doing something you love, it's easy to get passionate about it, right? So I absolutely love meat cutting. I love meat in general. There's so much to talk about. So fire away.
I was really trying hard not to razz you when you were up there, but I was being on my best behavior.
I'm good with hecklers. Yeah, no, that's all right.
I know. I was impressed, Tyler, man. Like Tyler's just chomping at the bit, man.
I got you.
Should have been up there with you. Oh, dude. So, Dr. Bass, how did you get into this?
Yeah, I've been cutting meat. I often say either probably like between 3 and 5 years old. I was there in my grandmother's garage, helping my folks cut meat, make sausage, make salami and everything. I come from a very Italian family. My last name is not at all Italian, but I'm 3/4 Italian. And as a result, food and especially meat is the center of everything. I mean, I come from the type of family where we're talking about what we're having for dinner while we're finishing breakfast. You know, it's such a big deal. Yeah. So, you know, and meat especially. And I remember specifically, probably about, I think it was probably like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. My great aunt Lola, my Zia Lola, she asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up? You're going to be like a doctor or a fireman?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to be a butcher." Well,
nice.
Kind of rolled her eyes at that, you know. Okay, fine. Turns out you can do that. But I'm also very stubborn, and I love to learn, and I wanted to teach this to a broad audience. And to do that, you really needed to get into the university system, and I saw how the university system was, and I'm like, I can do better than that. I can change that. And so ultimately I ended up, I worked for a beef company for 8.5 years before I started here at the University of Idaho. Now I am part of the faculty. To truly make a career out of it, you have to get a PhD, and so that's what I did, and here we are.
Now you're a doctor. You're a doctor and a butcher.
Yeah, that's right. How about it?
Yep.
Take that.
Making your aunt proud. Oh my gosh. So we just judged the American Wagyu's best Wagyu steak in America. And that was in Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So right around the corner there from you. And so there were about 18 steaks that we got to judge. And so what did you think? What was your first thought? I mean, do you see a lot of Wagyu beef in your industry right now? Like, what was your first thoughts on those probably top cuts, top beef in the whole world, though?
Remember when you pulled out the marbling scale that we were going to use, and I was like, that's not even close. Going to be on the chart.
Yeah. So I was asked by the American Wagyu Association to come and do some kind of, it was a subjective assessment, but visual subjective assessment of the marbling in the ribeyes that were sent for the competition. Well, so I pull out my USDA marbling cards, and they have added in the last 2 years higher levels of marbling, because we are seeing a continual trend of adding more marbling to traditional beef cattle. I pulled them out. I saw, I think, one steak of those that were sent in, and I'm like, these aren't going to touch it. There's nowhere, like, I can't use these as a subjective measure. I have to go to the Japanese scale. And so that's what I did. I pulled up my laptop, as you saw, and pulled up the Japanese grading scale, which is goes from 1 to 12. It's called BMS, Beef Marbling Standards. Surprisingly, the Japanese use the English as the abbreviation, Beef Marbling Standard. But BMS, 12 being about 50% marbling, about 50% what we would call intramuscular fat.
Yeah.
I think if you guys recall, there were steaks that I was having to guess above 12.
Yeah.
Because we are hitting levels of marbling. Personally, I'd never seen anything like that in person. I have seen images, but I've never seen anything like that in person. So it was quite a treat.
There was a few 14s and I think a 15.
Wow.
Yeah, we estimated a 15. Like this, it's total extrapolation, as we would say in the sciences. Like, we are outside the boundaries. We're in a new frontier. And so it was pretty fun. It was incredible.
Extrapolation.
As opposed to interpolation.
That's wild. I think that the Japanese use beef marbling standard because they want the whole world to just use that, right? So that's, for us, me and Tyler have a big issue with just the grading scales in the U.S. with Prime. I know that there's 3 levels of Prime, supposedly 4 levels of Prime. It doesn't go high enough for Wagyu, for a lot of those high-end Wagyus, as we know. And we know that Australia has their own. I mean, everyone has their own marbling scale. How in Canada, how they judge it. So, why can't we use a worldwide beef marbling standard like the BMS? Is there a huge issue with that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because me and Tyler would pull if we could make the decision, we'd say, let's freaking do it right now. Let's go.
To now.
Well, guys, it goes back to the Old Testament, back when. No, I'm just kidding. It's
right.
Every country historically had started out with their own way of merchandising their product. Okay. The U.S. has probably one of the oldest means of assessing beef quality. Surprisingly, it actually goes back to meat being sold to the U.S. military during World War I. And the military wanted like a standard quality level to feed the troops. And so USDA came up with a kind of an assessment. It was very different from what we have now. But eventually we came up with these marbling standards. And so it's levels of fat, that intramuscular fat that's found within those, the ribeye at the 12th and 13th rib separation. Very precise. Okay. Now that's where the precision goes out the window with USDA standards, because and if I had the USDA guys sitting right next to me, they would just chuckle along with me, because it's kind of like the meat world. Why do you do it this way? Because that's how we do it. Well, that's the answer, right? You ask any butcher, why do you do that? Because that's how I've always done it. Okay, so we have become a little bit more precise from a scientific stance of assigning actual numbers to different levels of marbling. And so, say you have select, which is what we call a slight level of marbling. Well, what the heck does that mean? It equates to about 2% intramuscular fat in the ribeye. Then we get into choice. Okay, that's a small level of marbling. It's like, what do these words even mean? Well, we started assigning numbers to them, and so slight became 300, small became 400, modest, moderate 500, 600. It still doesn't mean anything specifically to actual percentage of marbling. And like you said, every country's, not every, but many different countries do have different standards. Why can't we have a universal one? I don't know. We're just not there yet as humanity, I guess. And each place, prior to, we're sitting here, you're in Seattle, I'm in North Idaho right now. We're having an awesome conversation like we're sitting around a kitchen table. All of that stuff was developed long before we had this kind of ideas and technologies. And so to create a universal standard, I think it would take a lot of debate. Who has the best one? Quite frankly, if from a scientific standpoint, the Australians really have a cool grading system. It's also the most complicated and hardest to understand. And so you'd have to have, everybody, all these meat scientists come together, have to come to an agreement. There would be a lot of meat, a lot of beer drank, and in the end, we probably wouldn't come to a conclusion. And so what we need to do is still kind of focus on what is right for the animals in those areas and in that country. The Japanese scale works really well for Wagyu. Wagyu is their beef. And so that's kind of why we came back to using that for our assessment in that kitchen.
Right.
Yeah. So does the BMS, does it go like low enough? Like would a select be a BMS 1, or is it not even on the charts? Okay.
No, yeah, select would probably be a BMS 1. And so that, and that's a good point to bring up too, is that we were talking Wagyu, and just like in traditional sense, not all Angus cattle are the same, not all Wagyu cattle are the same. There are different levels. There's different higher quality, lower quality kind of stuff. And that's where the BMS comes in really handy. So like a USDA select would be like a BMS 1. Choice would probably be somewhere in like 2 to 3. Our common prime in the United States would probably be close to like a high 5 or 6. So we're halfway up the scale with some of the highest quality cattle that are produced in the United States right now from a traditional sense. And that's where the Wagyu comes in and starts breaking all the rules.
Remember, not all of those steaks that we judged, I don't want to talk trash about any personal farm, but there were a couple that were crazy high, a couple 14s, 15s, but there were also some entries that were in the 6 and 7.
Yep.
So what you're saying is, the BMS for that Wagyu cow that we saw didn't always go up to 10, 11, and 12. We saw some 6 and 7s there too, which would probably be super prime, right?
Yep. Yeah. The 6s and 7s would still fall into probably a prime category if it was in the U.S. grading standards. But when you start going into that level of animal quality potential, they stood out, and not necessarily in a great way. And so compared to some of the others that were just out of this world amount of marbling,
crazy.
It was different.
And there was a couple New York strips in there too. You remember that?
Yeah, well,
can't follow the rule.
It's close. It's still the longissimus dorsi muscle. So
longissimus
dorsi. Yeah.
Yep, man. That's awesome, man. Looking at all those steaks, one thing I always talk about is the quality. Like, what does quality mean? Because we were saying some of those steaks weren't super marbled. When we talked to the winner, Reed from Lone Mountain Wagyu, we kind of brought up the whole question, like, what does quality really mean? Is it the most marble? Because I think out there's a lot of people that would love to eat that BMS 5, 6, 7. And there's a lot of people who wouldn't want that BMS 10, 11, 12. And there's a lot of people in between. So it's preference, right? Like, is the Wagyu cow going to be more tender at a BMS 7? And then that's still going to be a great quality, steak. So like, what does quality really mean? Is it just marbling, or is it tenderness and flavor and how it's raised? Like that, to me, that's the question.
Yeah, well, and that's a great question. That's a big question. So thankfully, we'll have another 3.5 hours to discuss this, right? So I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing for the listeners. But no, what makes for a high quality, palatable eating experience? We want to have a sufficient amount of tenderness. Tenderness is the first thing that you experience when it hits your palate. Shortly after that is flavor. Flavor is going to be the aromatic compounds coming off. Plus, there might be some buttery fat flavors that are going to kind of start to incorporate with that overall flavor experience. And then you're going to feel something called juiciness, right? So if it's dry, it's hard to chew it down. It's hard to swallow it. You want something that has good tenderness, that has good flavor and good juiciness. All right. So we have known for a long time in the meat sciences, the more fat you have in the muscle, the more tender, flavorful, and juicy it is. In the U.S. standard of grading, we kind of like say good, better, best, select, choice, prime. Now we're getting into crazy town level of marbling with the Wagyu, and I have often tried to equate it to. Evan and I, we were visiting before you started recording about sommeliers. Okay, sommeliers can pick out nuances that the traditional palate, normal palate, mine would not necessarily pick out maybe. And so I like to say, if you give me a $20 bottle of wine and a $200 bottle of wine, I'll sip the $20 and say, that was good, and then I'll sip the $200 and I say, that was good, but You give that to a sommelier and they'll spit out the $20 possibly, and then maybe kind of give you all the nuances and critiques of the $200 bottle of wine. And that's kind of, I think, where we're going with this extremely high level of marbling when you get into the Wagyu category. Okay. And so you start getting into, right, like the BMS beef marbling standards 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and maybe beyond, which I believe we saw. Now you're hitting all of the marks that it's tender. There's no question about it. Fat is less dense than the muscle surrounding it. So if you have more of that, it's easier to bite through. The flavor, oh my gosh, out of this world. Now my mediocre palate couldn't really pick out the nuances, I don't think. I could tell you guys could. You guys are culinarians. This is your job to be able to kind of pick out the nuanced stuff. I'm like, that's really good. I'll have another one, Juiciness, all of them out of this world. And so from my perspective, a lot of them were just really, really good. I think the limitations would be the amount of fats that's there. You get satiated very quickly. It's hard to keep eating a lot of that high fat content item. And so that's kind of where, you get into the true Japanese type of dining. They eat paper thin slices of this stuff, or tiny cubes, right? Absolutely. And so it's more of it's a palate experience rather than a center of the plate item, right? Yeah. And so I don't know if that answers your question. You're asking, like, how does this all work together? I think we're in a cool new world with this availability of Wagyu, that for those who want to really go and experience things and take it to their next level and really focus on that dining experience, Wagyu gives you that chance.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Yeah. If you were, so number one, what's your go-to favorite steak?
Ribeye, chuck end ribeye, specifically right off the fifth rib. Okay. It's got most of that cap right there. Just fun. Yeah. Yeah.
And do you like a prime? Do you like it kind of medium? What's your BMS love?
USDA Prime, definitely, if I can get that. And then now that I've truly experienced some exceptional Wagyu, I would love to try some of that on a good ribeye. I don't know if I could finish a 12-ounce ribeye with that level of marbling, right? I mean, fat is so satiating. It fills you up that, I mean, maybe I could get through half of it and I'm like, I give up. I can't keep going. So, but yeah, that higher level of marbling, It's pretty tasty.
Now, do you think that being who you are and who we are, if you could put a grass-fed steak of that ribeye or a grain-fed or a corn-finished or whatever, do you think that you could tell those all apart?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So when we talk grass-fed, and I'm going to use the broader term forage finished because not all of the forage that these animals are eating is technically grass. Like corn is technically a grass. It's just a very tall growing grass, family Poaceae, right? As opposed to legumes where we start talking about clovers, you have different forbs that could be in there. All of that fall under kind of the general term grass fed, but it's forage. Anyway, yeah, you can tell the difference. First thing that I would notice, most likely if it's coming from a forage finished animal, if the steak's coming from a forage finished animal, is does it have a sufficient amount of fat? Because it's hard to get very much fat or marbling into the steak when an animal is only consuming forages, because the forages, it doesn't have the nutrient density that something that, say, has starch. Corn, we grow a lot of corn in this country. We're at a good latitude for it, excellent climate for growing corn. That's why we feed corn to most beef cattle in this country. But here in the Pacific Northwest, actually, we're not very good at growing corn because we have a short growing season. It's just not good conditions. So we can grow wheat, we can grow barley. For the north you go, barley becomes kind of the main ingredient. We feed a lot of potatoes here in the Pacific Northwest. It's the starch that you need to get. If you can get that starch into the diet, then you get that beautiful white fat that's going to give you that kind of more buttery beef flavor. And so that's the other thing that you'll notice is that the animal that's finished on what we call more a concentrate diet, so it has more of that starch in it. It's corn, wheat, barley, potato, what have you. You're going to have a different flavor to that fat. And it's a more smoother, milder flavor. The forage finish usually has a sharpness to it. Sometimes can have a gaminess to it, depending on when that animal is finished. And forage finishing is extremely inconsistent. It's hard to get the same taste and flavor every single time from that farm or ranch. Okay. And so you're super dependent on just the nuances of the feed. Whereas the concentrate finishing with the higher starch content, you get a more consistent product. And I'm going to say it's superior.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. There's that grass-fed versus grain-fed argument right now. It's everywhere. We even just mention it on like a podcast, and people start commenting like crazy. So I mean, it's all about preference too, right? You said, I prefer grain-fed.
Absolutely.
Yes. Some people prefer
it's 100% preference. Some people do have a preference for that stronger flavor. I will also tell you that some of the most sought after beef in the world is US, Australian, Japanese. And that is because those are getting getting concentrate finish. They are getting that grain finishing. There's research out there that demonstrates that in a country that normally would consume forage finished, grass finished beef, when served beef from US, Japan, Australia, concentrate finished, they still prefer the concentrate finished.
Yeah.
Where you would think that if you're used to the grassy flavor, then that's what you would want. It's total preference though. And I'm just excited if people want to eat beef. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. Yeah. And you can get high marbling on a grass finished ration. It just takes a really, really, really long time. And that starts to price you out of markets. And it's really hard to do. So anyway.
I think the cool thing that I'm learning about though is Wagyu grass fed, because you start with those beautiful genetics. Grass fed, grass finished. Starts with the great genetics, and they're finishing on grass. We've actually had some really good Wagyu grass fed that looks like almost prime, and I was pretty impressed with that. But it's a different. It did taste a little bit different, and it's all about preference. At the end of the day,
it is about preference. Well, and you brought up an excellent point. If the animal doesn't have the genetic potential to lay down that marbling, it's not going to happen. They have to have that genetic potential, and Wagyu cattle do have that. We're starting to see it in the Angus, in the Hereford, in the Charolais. Not nearly to the extent that Wagyu have, though.
Well, that's a great lead into my next question is, really, what are the most important scientific differences between conventional beef and Wagyu beef?
Yeah. So first and foremost, and probably the reason why we haven't just completely gone to all Wagyu production in the United States is that Wagyu cattle are less efficient. So it takes a longer time to grow them to a market weight, to get that marbling to deposit. You feed them on what we call well, it's a higher forage ration. There's still the concentrate that's in there, but um, they don't put the muscle down as fast. And so our traditional beef breeds, the Angus, Hereford, Charolais, Limousin, Simmental, you name it, the list goes on forever. They are meant to grow muscle and beef, and it's at an affordable price. And that's kind of why we get into that. Now, the cool thing about the Wagyu is that they do have that genetic potential to put down some really cool marbling. And that is going to make a big difference in that final palatability, like we've already talked about, that flavor, tenderness, juiciness. We're seeing a trend with our traditional breeds, our Angus, Hereford, Charolais types that are definitely moving higher into higher levels of marbling. They still can't touch where the Wagyu are right now.
Yeah, that high level of marbling. So, steak lovers talk about marbling, fat, and fat streaking. So, from maybe a meat scientist perspective, what happens to texture, flavor, and mouthfeel when that marbling increases from like sciencey stuff?
Yeah.
Like what happens?
Yeah. That's a great question. So texture of marbling has been assessed quite a bit over the years, and the idea to think about is kind of like the baked potato analogy. If you take a baked potato and you just drop a big chunk of butter on the middle of it, it doesn't mean that every bite's going to have that flavor of fat and butter there, right? And so the idea also being, if in the beef world, if we can have fine distribution of that marbling, so tiny flecks, but a lot of it abundantly, that's when you start to hit that just exceptional level of eating experience, because now every bite has that right amount of fat in it, and it's a more delicate flavor that you end up with, but you get exceptional tenderness because that fat's breaking up, the muscling that's in there. Now we did have a ribeye in the competition that had just a ridiculous amount of marbling, and it was long streaks of fat. And what we'll find, what some researchers have found, is when you have that coarser fat, you do have a little bit of inconsistency in mouthfeel, but normally what folks will tell you is that you get a slightly more juicy flavor. Now, when you're in like a BMS level 10, I dare most people to determine the difference between a 10 and a 12 in juiciness, okay? And distribution, right? And so that juiciness and texture start to make a lot more difference when you're at the lower levels of marbling than when you get into the Wagyu levels, okay? But still, if I can find that just like snowflake marbling that's just super distributed and super fine throughout, man, that is the top of the top.
You know how I eat my ribeye?
How's that?
I cut the fat off the top all the way, and people were looking at me like, "What the are you doing, man?" And then I dice that fat into bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
So then every piece of meat, I take one piece of fat and put it on top.
I love it. Yep.
It's perfect.
Yep. Get more of that distribution. Yeah. And I love beef fat. I think it's wonderful.
So good.
Exactly. And a lot of people say that it's that spider web. They look for that spider web fat, like that's a nice way to kind of like name it and look at it,
Yeah.
Man. What are some things you've maybe found out about Wagyu beef in the last few years that maybe you didn't know before, or that were myths that were busted, like crazy things like that? So many people say so many things about Wagyu. So what are some funny maybe things that you can bust here? Some myths you can bust.
Yeah. So I have well, one of them, and it's not really a myth, but it's been anecdotal out there for a long time, is that the fat that is found in Wagyu cattle is very different type of fat. And that's very true. And in fact, it's a lower saturation of fat. And so it is closer to, say, a pat of butter than it is to normal beef fat. it melts at a lower temperature. You can put it on your tongue and you can actually feel the melting of that. So I went to grad school 100 years ago at Colorado State University with a native Japanese, Kenichi Kato, and he's one that you guys got to get on the program sometime. But he's a 5th generation butcher in Kyoto, Japan.
Oh, wow.
He knows the Wagyu inside and out. And one of the things he used to talk about was the assessment of the carcasses that they would go and measure is, can you put your thumb onto the fat, and does it leave an imprint? Is it melting just by the heat of your thumb? And so it's already a little bit different. So that's actually, it's a myth, but it's a proven myth. That is a different level of marbling. It's a different level of saturation. It has more monounsaturated fats, which, by the way, are really good for you. They're heart healthy fats. All right, so omega, yeah, you get some of the omegas. You get the oleic acid. That's my favorite one. So it's 18. I'm gonna get really nerdy. It's 18 carbon chain. It's a single double bond. It's monounsaturated. It's a beautiful thing, and it's super palatable. The human palate loves it, right? And it's good for you. How great is that, right?
It's good for you.
And it's good for you. Oh. Yeah. Thank you for that. Right?
Myth busted.
Myth busted. Now
you heard it from a doctor.
Now here's the other thing. So the other thing that I've learned from Kenichi over the years, we call him Ken, is you hear about the guys that are sitting there, they're brushing their Wagyu cattle in Japan, they're feeding it sake, they're singing it's Beethoven or something, I don't know, and he says, yeah, that happens, but that's for the tourists. Really, right. It comes down to, they're ranchers. They're very small ranchers. A big herd is probably like a dozen animals. So they're intensively managing. You got to realize that there's not a lot of farmland in Japan. And so they just have to super intensively manage these animals. It's not very efficient, but it's very effective. And it makes that final product that's exceptional, right? He says, the brushing part, well, that's actually there's a lot of practicality to that, because when you take that animal to the packing house now you've taken a lot of maybe the straw or sawdust or dirt off of the outside of that hide, so that when you go through and process that animal, that's less chance for contamination. So that actually makes a lot of sense. Doesn't have a lot to do with marbling deposition, but it makes a lot of sense from a practical butchery standpoint. So I think that was kind of a fun, cool myth that's out there as well. I don't know, what kind of myths have you guys heard of?
We have so many.
And it's always that's not real. That's not real Wagyu. Wagyu is only in Japan.
Only in Japan.
No, Wagyu is merely a breed of cattle. Yeah. So the difference is it Kobe beef?
Yes.
That has to come from Japan. That's like proper champagne has to come from the Champagne region of France.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's sparkling white wine or Prosecco. I don't know. But, so there are regionalities. And so if it's Kobe beef, there's an American company that many folks, if you're familiar with Wagyu in the United States, Snake River Farms, they're the brand of Wagyu with good affordability if you want to get started in it. It's kind of more broad spectrum, different levels of marbling. But a great company that I work with regularly, AgriBeef. They're based in Boise, Idaho, and so awesome people. They did get in a little trouble early on with their marketing because they're calling it Kobe style beef, or American style Kobe. And in the end, it's like, guys, Kobe has to be in Japan. And that's a city in Japan, near Kyoto, by the way, where my friend Ken works. So,
right.
Yes.
Have you ever seen the snow beef?
No, tell me more.
So it's in Hokkaido.
Okay, way up north. Yep.
Yeah, way up north, and it's very cold up there, and you can't get it in the United States. You cannot get it, and it's
really
insanely marbled. It's like that 16. It's up there, dude. It's crazy.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. So let's get a little nerdy here for a second, because cattle, they prefer cold temperatures. Now there's a lineage of cattle, the Bos Indicus, where the Brahman type, big neck humps, big floppy ears, they're designed for hot, humid climates. Okay, But the remainder, and even them, they prefer cooler temperatures. When you're in colder temperatures, they have a tendency to eat more. Like many of us will, in the wintertime, we'll sit down with a big hearty bowl of stew, right? We'll feast. They will eat more. If they're eating more, they're going to put down more fat. And so that makes a lot of sense that if cattle are being fed up in Hokkaido, which is quite a ways north, that's their snowy island in Japan. That they probably do have a lot more marbling up there.
Yep. I
Oh,
have
cool.
found seasonality over here in the Pacific Northwest when I'm butchering. It's usually right around mid-August, and the beef is way leaner than it usually is. The texture is totally different. It's like almost floppy, if you will. Cut the ribeye. It's not that firm texture. And it happens.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
It happens every year, and I'm always like, I call my people. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Why does this happen? Help me out. I don't get it.
So I can't say for certain, but my hypothesis as a scientist would be these animals, as I just mentioned, like cooler temperatures, but just like humans, if it's 95, 100 degrees outside, we're really not that hungry. Like we'll sit and peck, but mostly we just kind of want to laze around and we don't want to eat much. This is where, you guys run restaurants. Make sure you have air conditioning in the summertime because they're going to want to eat more, right? So there you go. Okay. So in the summertime, if it's hot outside, they don't want to eat as much. They're not going to put down as much fat as a result. And that fat, once refrigerated, once cooled down, that gives you the firmness in the meat. Lean meat is very, very floppy. It's like chasing Jell-O across the table.
It's weird.
So yeah, it's very different. But when you get into that colder, once you make that meat cold through the chilling process that we do for butchery, if there's fat in it, it gives you firmness, and that's beautiful to cut. I love cutting highly marbled beef. I love it. Yep.
What do you think the rating was on that side of beef you broke down for everybody?
Yeah, so that was one from our friends at AgriBeef. That was probably like a 7, BMS 7 probably. So I mean, it was well within what we would call the prime category for USDA. But yeah, it was a nice side. It wasn't to the level that some of those steaks that we saw. But we don't need that for a cutting demonstration.
Totally.
So,
and it was getting pretty warm up there.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
You should have seen this guy. He was standing on plastic sheets, and by the end of it, he's sliding all over the place.
Yeah.
That was melting on the
kind of like an ice rink. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. It was a ton of fun.
Man. Well, hey, let's talk about the total opposite of Wagyu beef. You were saying beforehand that you were talking to someone who was raising Piedmontese.
Yeah.
What is that for people who don't know?
Man,
Totally.
it's breaking my brain right now because everything that I just told you that we're so confident of in the meat sciences, more fat, more marbling, all that stuff just leads to a better eating experience. And now I was introduced to this guy. He actually sent me to Italy, to the Piedmont, to go and learn about these critters, hang out with Italian butchers, which, I mean, what a freaking dream come true to go and just hang out with butchers in a different country.
Oh my God, dude.
But yeah. And then I tried out some of his beef, and I'm like, so Piedmontese is a breed of cattle native to the northwestern corner of Italy, so kind of right on the edge of the French Alps. And they're mountainous. They're very lean animals. They're known for what's called double muscling. So it doesn't mean they have twice as many muscles, but they have almost twice as many muscle fibers within that muscle, which just means that it's a very the muscle fibers are smaller. We do know that smaller muscle fibers make for a more tender piece of meat. This stuff is extremely tender, okay? But it's also really, really lean, which this is what's breaking my brain because the flavor is still exceptional.
It's mind-boggling.
Now, here's the thing. When I was in Italy, I ate a lot of beef. I don't know if I ate any that was cooked. Like everything was... You eat it raw, right? You're eating carpaccio, you're eating tartare, you're just slicing off slabs all over here, there, and everywhere. You might put a little
Martino, right?
Yeah, you can get a Fiorentina. You can get a Fiorentina, which that's mostly like we're gonna put it on a super hot fire.
And
We're
it's
gonna just scald the outside and
barely
then
warm.
go. Barely warm. And actually, man, oh my gosh, this is just the fun stuff. It's like body temperature, which kind of sounds a little gross, but body temperature for cattle is 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit. If you hit right about 100 degrees finish, so you pull it off the grill at like, say 85, 90 degrees, you let it carry over, you're hitting like right around 100, 105 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature. So pretty darn rare.
Rare.
Exceptional.
Really?
Absolutely, like will blow your freaking mind. And so here I am, Mr. Meat Scientist, PhD. I've been in this business for so long. I'm teaching all this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. Silence. I'm just sitting there savoring this unbelievable. Yeah, I had a Fiorentino of one of his, which is that's just a giant porterhouse for those who aren't familiar. And it was the strip loin side, not the tenderloin side. And I was speechless. I was absolutely speechless. And so there is so much more to discover in the meats world. And I was telling Evan before you hopped on, right before I was at the American Wagyu Association, 2 days earlier, I was standing in a field of Piedmontese. I went from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah, you
and
did.
Guys, they're both amazing. And I'm saying it out loud. It's just, and so we have a lot more to learn.
What do you think would happen if they crossbred Wagyu with Piedmontese? Now we're getting somewhere, dude.
I don't know, man.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun.
Muscle structure and like, oh, what would even happen? That would be crazy. Oh man,
you get a lot more meat. That's for sure. The double muscling. I mean, it looks like Schwarzenegger. It looks like a bodybuilder. These cattle. So yeah, they're beautiful in their own right. They're just very different. So yeah.
Now, when you tasted that and it was raw-ish, did it come across quite a bit more of that minerally, irony, tinny, bloody?
You know, I was
really strong, beefy.
I was expecting that, and it was just good beef. Honestly, yeah, and here's where I think in the meat sciences, we could probably do a lot more investigation because yeah, you can get that with a traditional type of animal here in the United States, where if you get like a blue rare steak, it's gonna be irony, it's gonna be a little bit metallic. Some people want that, you know. Some people want grass fed. Some people want Wagyu. You know, it's just that's the target that they're going after. I did not experience that with the Piedmontese. It's a weird breed of animals that is blowing my mind right now. So,
It's funny that you and I both agree that the chuck end ribeye is the greatest steak on the animal, right?
Yeah, 100%, bar none, period, end.
There's a day that I want a Terrace Major.
Sure.
Because I love Terrace Major because it does have that super minerally, tinny, bloody, like such a different experience on the exact same animal too, right?
Yeah. And those are the days you must be feeling a little anemic and you need a little bit of that extra iron content or something.
I should probably have one for lunch today, but
yeah. So for those listening, like the Terrace Major, this is a fun one that we kind of rediscovered here in the United States around 2005, and it really took off. And it's something you don't see outside of the restaurant community, really. It's just the restaurant world eats them up literally and figuratively faster than the retailers could ever touch. But it's a great piece of meat. Comes out actually out of the shoulder, under the arm, and it's very tender and easy to work with. Good yield. It's a great cut.
You know, my other favorite is?
What's that?
Hanging tender.
Oh, amen. I love the hanging tender. I love the robust flavor of the hanging tender.
So good.
You know? And that's one of those that a lot of folks, I think it's a dichotomy when you're talking about the hanging tender. You either love it or you don't. And it's that strong flavor that comes with it. It's part of the pillars of the diaphragm, so it's part of the breathing apparatus on the animal, and it works a lot, but it doesn't work that hard because it's just moving air, but it works a lot because it's working at every breath. And that gives you a lot more of the myoglobin, which is the red stuff in the meat. That's the protein content. And that's more iron. Really is a lot more iron content.
Love it.
Yep. Yeah.
Dude, I love it. Let's talk about dry aging because that we kind of talk about that here and there. We love it. I was just telling you beforehand that I went to Beast and Cleaver and I picked up 100-day dry aged New York strip that had been koji rubbed, and it was just phenomenal, funky. It actually cooked faster. He told me he's like, it's going to cook faster because the moisture's taken up. But can you kind of break down what dry aging is, and then
Yeah,
let's and some methods maybe just so people can
sure.
understand like where we're coming from.
Yeah, so dry aging, there's a lot yet to be discovered on the dry aging side. We've conducted research, we've published research here at the University of Idaho. There's a few other universities out there that have played around in it. But dry aging is an artisanal means of aging beef or other meats for that matter. Like if you've ever had a dry aged pork loin, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Okay, you just
Delicious.
don't have to go as long, right? But dry aging, usually to get proper dry aging, I recommend from my scientific perspective, which what we've identified, minimum 28 days. And what it is you don't have meat in a bag, you have meat hanging out in a cooler in open air. Okay, so it's still in refrigerated temperatures, but you're not restricting the movement of the moisture. And like you said, yeah, there's very little moisture left in it, and so it cooks very quickly. It also lends itself very well to highly marbled meats, highly marbled beef, especially because there's no moisture there. So if you want it, if you do want it, if you want it or you take it to a higher degree of doneness, you got to be careful because there's no water there. So you got to make sure that there's the fat to compensate for the juiciness. But here's my hypothesis, which we were able to somewhat prove once I came to the university side. But when I was working for beef company, um, there was I interacted with a lot of dry aged beef guys, and I started to notice something that every place I went to regionally, like different parts of the country, it they had dry age, but it tasted different. New York City area tasted different from Denver, tasted different from Houston, San Francisco, Seattle, you name it. Wherever you went, it tasted a little different. And I'm like, what's going on here? Well, if you hang out in the dry aging world enough, you'll notice that we let a lot of what we call microflora develop. Mold, right? We're going to grow mold on the outside of these primals, subprimals of meat. What my hypothesis was that I would bet there are different mold communities depending on where you go. And we were
Absolutely.
able to prove that here with some microbiome work that we did here at the University of Idaho, which also lent to kind of talking about, well, it gives you a different fingerprint, it gives you a different flavor because those different molds are going to produce a different byproduct, different flavor, and then it's the relative, what we call the relative abundance of those molds, and so you might have a whole group of Evans and a whole group of Tylers and just one Phil there that's hanging out. Those guys are going to give different flavors than if you had a whole bunch of Phils and one Tyler and two Evans that are sitting there. Like every one of them is going to give you a different, unique flavor. So you may even have similarities in the mold species, but it's the abundance of what they are that is ultimately contributing to the differences in flavor. And this is where I would love to just hang out with a sommelier, and you want to talk about like a mind blowing experience. Give me your background. What do you like? What are your flavor preferences? And now you start picking and choosing dry aged beef from different parts of the country to pair with the right wine and the
There
right
you
person's
go.
palate. And I mean, oh my gosh,
There
right?
you go.
How freaking cool would that be? Now,
That's
how expensive would
love
that be too? But how cool would that be, right?
it.
You have your whole wine cellar over here. You're gonna pull bottles, and now you have your beef cellar over here, and you're gonna pull the right
That's
steak for the right customer.
All
oh
right,
man,
we know a guy, so we'll get the wine. You
I love it.
bring you source out all the beef, and we'll do it here together.
And I think we
Yeah.
just came up with our next business, guys. Love
You better have
it.
a big investor.
The meat we're hanging on to.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, dude, that's crazy though.
So dry aging is way cool. And you mentioned koji, and
What is the koji?
a friend of mine in Cleveland, Ohio, Chef Jeremy Umansky, who he calls himself more a gastronaut than a chef, but the guy's brilliant. Not afraid to try something new, and he really has taken off with this whole koji mold idea. Koji mold is actually it's Aspergillus oryzae, that's its species name. It's actually a rice pathogen. So it's a mold that grows on rice that rice farmers don't want growing there. But it's also been found to have a lot of benefits. Okay, so once you start using it, you can make tofu, sake, all kinds of different fun things with this Aspergillus oryzae mold, and it has a lot of unique properties that when it starts to grow on the outside of a food, it brings a level of umami, savory flavor that is just out of this world. It's so cool. And it's probably why
almost like seaweed, right? Kombu.
Yeah, it's the savory flavor, right? And so it definitely pairs very well with the Japanese kind of cuisine, which is where it originated, and now it's starting to pop up in other places. And so as a unique mold that we can propagate and know about, koji is one that is fun to play with too.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
When you were doing your demo, and I could tell how passionate you were about teaching, and I really would have loved you to be my teacher in culinary school. I'd be a way better butcher than I am today. But you talked about sinew a lot, and sinew being chewy, right?
Yep, connective tissue. Yep.
So let's talk about the sinew that's in the middle of the flat tire.
In the flat iron, yeah, great question. So when you take out that muscle, it's called the infraspinatus muscle. So if you feel your shoulder blade and you find the ridge of your shoulder, it's the muscle that sits just behind that ridge. Okay, so the infraspinatus muscle, if you cut it correctly, you pull that whole muscle out. It's the top blade cut, and then you have to essentially fillet out that center piece of connective tissue. Now that center piece of connective tissue, if cooked slowly, you can gelatinize it. You can turn it into gel, and it's beautiful flavor and texture.
That's where I was going with it.
I love it. I love it.
Hoping you were going to say that, because you cook it in the style of brisket.
Yes.
And that sinew,
you slow cook it. Yeah.
Sinew that would just be crazy elastic.
Yeah.
It turns into jelly.
Yeah. Well, so what we played around with sous vide with a chef friend of mine, sous vide the whole top blade with the sinew and everything in there. And then after, 24 hours of sous vide, it's broken down. And now you cool that thing and you're slicing thin slices, put it into soup, put it on a salad. You just eating it on a cracker. It's just so tasty and fun. Yeah.
God, I love that.
He loves that. He loves that flat iron and that meat jelly, man. Dave, with all your expertise, let's give the consumers something that they can ask when they go to like their retail, their butchers or grocery stores. So what are some good things to look for? Maybe ask your butcher, and what are some maybe labels you should or should not be paying attention to?
I am a big proponent of what we do here in the United States and in most industrialized countries. We have here, I am bold enough to say in the United States, we have the safest food supply in the world, bar none, period, end. And so you can look at labels and you can use those as a preference. But just know that if it's coming from USDA inspected meat, you're in good shape there. Then comes the level of quality. What is it that you are willing to pay for? And different levels of quality, as we said, Select, Choice, Prime. I would recommend most folks, if you want to have a more guaranteed eating experience, start with Choice or Prime, or at least the higher levels of Choice, okay? Select, you can still have a good eating experience. It's just harder to do. You need to really baby that meat when you're working with it, okay?
You gotta be a good cook.
Yeah, you got to be a darn good cook. Yeah, it doesn't mean it can't be. It's just that it's an insurance policy, okay? The other thing to look at is, what are all the labeling claims? And it seems like a package of meat these days, depending on where you go, it's like a whole book that you're reading on all the labeling claims. And that is very much a preference thing. If somebody is looking for more of a naturally raised animal, just read, what does that mean? Because natural, by USDA definitions, means minimally processed, no added ingredients, which means nothing really. All fresh beef is essentially natural, right? So read the claims, see what it is that you're looking for. If you're certain raising practices that you want, ask the butcher about that and see if that's the right fit for you. Just know that every line of data that is now on that package is also adding cost to the end user. And so it's a give and take. If there's certain things that you're trying to acquire then just realize you're probably going to pay more for that. If it's kind of just the generic steak sitting in a supermarket, it's still high, it's still safe to eat and could be high quality, just depending on the level of marbling. Look for that.
Yeah.
It might be more affordable, and you're not going to get all the label claims that you were looking for. So
Yeah.
that's my short answer.
Can I ask you, like, a lot of people say, eat U.S. beef. I'm such a big proponent of eating U.S.
Sure.
beef.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes though, if it's processed in the U.S., right, it can be product of the U.S., right?
Yes.
So, like,
Yes.
how do you maybe make sure that it was raised in the United States? Is there a good way to find that out?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say there's a good way unless you are buying from small local butchers that know where that animal came from, specifically that animal, where it came from. In the end, we still need to feed a lot of people in this country and around the world. And so as long as it's safe and wholesome to eat, I'm okay. And it doesn't bother me that it might be a little bit of meat from Brazil or something, and it's a small amount. But yeah, if it's processed here in the U.S., it can still say product of the U.S. If that is of a concern to you, yeah, you can work with smaller butchers that know exactly source verification of these animals. And a lot of the larger packers are starting to do source verification as well. You just need to do your homework and see, is it meeting those requirements? Is it truly born, raised, and slaughtered here in the United States, or is it born elsewhere? We bring cattle in from Canada, still raised, processed, etc. And so it's a preference thing. And yeah, just do your homework.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that there's so much fear mongering about that. Just what I was asking about, if it's slaughtered in the U.S., it can be product of the U.S. and who knows where it's coming from, and there is a lot of that fear mongering. So I'm glad you said, like, yes, it is very safe. We still have very safe practices. It is being tested. But if that does really matter to you, I think, like, to us, like meat dudes like us, I want to know exactly where my beef comes from. I know not everybody cares, and that's totally fine. Product of the U.S. is safe. But if you do want to know, we always say, go out and meet your rancher and try to get paired up with somebody who knows or like enjoy what they do. Like I just talked to Tyler McCann of Wyoming Cowboy Cuts, and it was such a great conversation, because he was really just saying, hey, go out there, and this rancher uses all of the the ugly produce, and he feeds his cattle with the ugly produce that would just get thrown away. So what he's doing is not necessarily organic or green or grass fed, but he's upcycling, and he's like utilizing products that would just go to waste. And like, I like that story, and I like that rancher, and it's good beef, and it tastes good, and I know where it's raised. That's a great matchup for me, So if you have the time to go out there and talk to somebody, I think that's like such a great way to do it. If you're beef people, meat dudes like all of us.
Yeah. Everybody needs to learn more about where the food comes from. A lot of it may surprise you in a very good way. And we all need to get closer to understanding where it comes from. And then also understanding that just because it might be coming from a larger scale operation doesn't mean it's bad. It's just they're economizing in many ways. But get to know your rancher, get to know your farmers if you can. Not everybody has that opportunity, luxury, but learn more, and you're always welcome to reach out to me.
I'm curious on your take on this label that scares everybody. Antibiotics.
Sure. Yeah.
Antibiotic free, hormone free, never any added antibiotics and stuff like that, because the never ever label. Some people are super freaked out about it, and then other people explain it like, well, I mean, if you get the flu, if you get an infection as a human, you go to your doctor and you get some antibiotics, and then it goes away, and eventually your body flushes the antibiotics out, right? So that label to me is like, it scares the most common people, because somehow it got just red flagged, like, oh, nope, you can't eat beef that's had ever any antibiotics.
Sure. Yeah. Well, how much time you got? So that's a big question right there, but I'm glad you asked it, and I'll do my best to economize the answer. There are definitely beef programs out there that are never programs, which means never added growth promotants, hormones, never antibiotics. Okay. That's a less efficient process with the no added growth hormones. And really the added growth hormones add maybe 40 to 60 extra pounds to a 1,500-pound steer. And so it's a small amount, but it makes a big difference to a farmer. All right. So that's the hormone side. But you asked about antibiotics, and I will tell you, farmers and ranchers do not want to use antibiotics, but we need to use that tool when an animal gets sick. That is our responsibility as farmers and ranchers. If you have children, it is your responsibility to keep that child alive. Okay. That means you need to go to your doctor. You need to get whatever is necessary to cure the illness. Sometimes that's antibiotics. Antibiotics, however, only work on bacteria. They do not work on viruses. They do not work on other microorganisms. They only work on bacteria. So cattle, they can get respiratory illnesses. They can get pneumonia, and we need to treat that. Not only is it right for the animal, but eventually it'll be right for the meat product later on, because we can't have sick animals going into the meat supply. That animal will now no longer be eligible for a never program. Fine. That just gets marketed a different way, but it's still going to be safe to eat as long as that product, that pharmaceutical has gone through its system and it's cleared and everything. And that's what we call the withdrawal period. Every medicine has a withdrawal period to it. Farmers and ranchers follow that very strictly, because if they send what we call a hot animal to market, as in an animal that still has that medicine in it, that animal, first off, it's illegal to sell meat and milk from that animal. But number two, that person ends up with enormous fines. They go on, there's literally a wall of shame on the USDA website that their name of the ranch will go on to. It's a big deal. It can crush a business, a family business, a farming business, if you're doing that. And so those steps are in place. They're extreme steps, and overwhelmingly, farmers and ranchers follow the rules. Okay. And in this country, you need to have veterinarian oversight before you can use antibiotics. Okay. So it's not like, you and I, we can't go to the pharmacy and just grab antibiotics off the shelf. We have to get a note from the doctor. Pharmacist meters it out, et cetera. Same thing with livestock. We have to get that note from the doctor, the veterinarian. So you have to maintain a good relationship there. In the end, I'm not afraid of it. They're still safe to eat. Just make sure that we go through the withdrawal period. For those who are overly concerned about it, and not overly concerned, but have a focus on it, look for the products that don't have that in there. They have the label claims. You can verify that. It's all through affidavit and oversight with audits and things like that to make sure that there's no mixing, and there's an opportunity for you as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know. We even fall into that. We even fall into that fear mongering. Like we even get nervous and scared, and we think about. We know a lot about meat, so I'm glad to kind of like just put it to bed a little bit. Like, yes, there, if you have concerns, look for the never ever. But it is safe to eat if it went through that withdrawal period, like you said. And if you're really
it's always good to ask the question too of what is the concern? Why are we concerned about that? And some people they have a hard time answering that. Antibiotics, they're not a bad thing for you. We use them to cure illness. If you are, say, penicillin, allergic to penicillin, like my wife is, like Tyler's holding his hand up right now. If you're allergic to penicillin and we use penicillin to cure an illness on an animal, there may be residue in there, and so we got to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, withdrawals and everything. But the bigger question comes down to, and this was a hot topic a few years back, was antibiotic resistance. Okay, and that's where overuse of antibiotics can lead to the bugs becoming stronger and harder to kill. All right, and that was the bigger question. And so, with livestock, we're very judicious about it. We do use a large dose because they're very large animals, right? So if they're sick, we got to take care of them. But again, following those, it's very judicious. Antibiotics are extremely expensive too. Yeah, that too. It's amazing how. I recall a few years ago I had a double ear infection. Went to the doctor. They got me the antibiotics and everything, and it cost me almost nothing through the pharmacy. And that's just insurance and this, that, and the other. But to buy antibiotics through a veterinarian, it's not cheap. It's very expensive. And so the farmers and ranchers use them very judiciously. And so there's a lot more to be had. That's a whole nother podcast probably, but
Totally.
I'm more than happy to talk more about that with anybody at any time.
You should.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I got one more question. I know you got to go. I know Tyler's got to go. We'll wrap it up here.
Sure.
Where do you see, let's get back to Wagyu. Where do you see the Wagyu industry 10 years from now?
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I'll look into my cloudy crystal ball over here and see. Yeah. I see, and hopefully nobody comes back 10 years later and listens to this podcast and say, you were wrong. But I see the influence of Wagyu continuing to grow. I don't know if it's going to be purebred Wagyu necessarily where we're going to really grow in. I see more of a crossbreeding possibility. So we're going to start taking this amazing superior Wagyu genetics and crossing them with a traditional beef animal. So like your Hereford, Angus, Charolais, Limousin, Simmental, to make kind of more this ideal critter that has good marbling, maybe not over the top exceptional marbling, but really good marbling and good growth potential. And so in short, that's where I see the blend happening. Honestly, the pork farmers, the pig farmers are the ones that have kind of taken this idea of, why do we have to have purebred everything? Why can't we just make something that's ideal for the market? And that's where they've gone. And so like the ideal commercial pig out there is very much a blend of different breeds. I think we may see some of that in the future, say 10 years from now in the beef world. But cattle farmers are one of the most stubborn people out there and very prideful of their breeds. And so there's also that and rightly so. It's a big animal, takes a lot to manage that, takes a long time to raise that animal up. So you should be proud of what you're raising. In the end, though, it comes down to who's going to finish that animal and what is the market asking for. And if people continue to want high quality meat at affordable price, we sometimes have to adjust a little bit. So how's that?
Love it.
I don't know if you talked to any of the ranchers at the American Wagyu Association seminar.
Handful, yeah.
Oh my goodness, there's some definite politics going on there.
Yes.
Who's got the best genetics? Who's got the best marbling? If they're doing Akaushi, red, black cross, F1s, all that kind of thing. So and rightfully so, right?
Yeah. You should be very proud of what you produce. In the end, however, we need to find some balance, and in the end, we need to sell this meat. And if it's the best of the best of the best, but nobody can afford it, then we kind of missed a mark, right?
Well,
Lamborghinis are awesome cars, but not everybody can afford one of those. So.
And honestly, out of those 18 steaks we judge, I bet 50% of the U.S. wouldn't like that. They'd be like, "That's too much. I don't want to eat
too much."
And so I like where is the market? What are we doing, right? We're trying to sell beef, right? Like that's the end of the day. We're trying to make a product for our consumers to purchase and enjoy. So what do they want? I think that like that F1 cross for the majority is what a lot of people want. And then there's going to be the high-end purebreds and full-bloods and stuff out there that people can afford and celebrate with, But yeah, it's what does the U.S. market actually want?
I mean, from a culinarian standpoint, you guys will take a black truffle and just barely shave it. You're not sitting there eating it like an apple, right? And so, it's finding that balance, right? It's finding that balance, and maybe you want to eat it like an apple, but not everybody's going to like that.
Don't dare me, bro.
No thanks.
Not everybody's going to like it, and it's not very affordable. So,
right. Oh my gosh. Well, I love it, man. Dr. Bass, thank you, man. Like this was
pleasure.
so awesome. You were so much fun to hang out with at the American Wagyu Association, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. You're not going to CattleCon, right?
No, I have my meat science class to be teaching right in the middle of it, and I don't like to leave my students behind. So
that's a good excuse.
Enjoy yourself. Yeah.
We'll be there, man. And
awesome.
But yeah, dude, once again, thank you so much for your time. How can people reach out to you and find you and ask you questions?
Yeah, so a couple different directions. So I work. I'm a public servant. I work at the University of Idaho. Pbass at uidaho.edu is my email. It's pretty quick to get to, or you can look me up on the website. Um, I also have a podcast. It's called Meats Pad. It's kind of a silly name, but MEATSPAD.com. Check that one out. We get super nerdy on that one. It's mostly designed for meat scientists, but come hang out because we still try to make it very digestible for everybody. And you can email us at info@meatspad.com there, and that'll get to me as well. And so, a couple different directions. I do have a book out there if you don't mind a shameless plug, but
Please.
I wrote a book. It's called "It's Not a Cow," and that's just because I'm so obsessed with cattle, and there's so much more than just a black and white critter munching cut out in the field. And so check that out. It's an easy read. If you like the way I talk, it's written exactly that way. And so check it out.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, definitely gonna check that out.
Ordering it right now.
Awesome.
Ordering it right now, man. Well, heck yeah, man. Well, honestly, dude, it was a pleasure. Hopefully, we do get to see you soon. We'd love to have you back on, and when different topics come up, we'd love to pick your brain, man. I mean, we'd love
My
to
pleasure.
use this resource, man. That you're
Yep.
you're so much fun. So
My pleasure. I'm at your service.
I love it. Well, thank you from the Meat Dudes and Dr. Bass. We will see you soon. Appreciate it.